A'ja Wilson had every reason to enjoy her night at the Miami Heat game, until she caught sight of a Caitlin Clark jersey just 2 seats over. What should have been a throwaway moment turned into a viral snapshot of Wilson's visible discomfort. For a player with multiple MVP titles and championship rings, the glare and tight-lipped reaction spoke volumes. But instead of shrugging it off like a seasoned pro, Wilson let the moment simmer, and the internet ran with it. Memes exploded, jokes flew, and once again, Wilson's name was trending for the wrong reasons. Wilson's inability to separate personal feelings from public perception has become a pattern. Rather than focusing on her on-court dominance, she continues to publicly stew over Clark's popularity, turning minor encounters into dramatic episodes. This latest moment wasn't about disrespect. It was about a fan wearing a jersey. If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe. The fact that Wilson made it about herself only reinforces why her frustration fails to resonate. The game spotlight is shifting, and instead of adapting, she's making herself a story in all the wrong ways. Had no clue she was about to go viral for something that had nothing to do with her stats, her dominance on the court, or any post-game interview. It happened courtside at a Miami Heat game, in a setting where the only spotlight should have been on the NBA players. But somehow, the moment zeroed in on Wilson and a fan, 2 seats away, in a Caitlin Clark jersey. And not just any jersey, an Indiana Fever Caitlin Clark jersey, bold as ever in a sea of heat and opposing team colors. There was no confrontation, no words exchanged, but Wilson's reaction said everything. She spotted the jersey, paused, and let the kind of silence hang in the air that only someone deeply irritated could deliver without speaking. And the cameras? Of course they caught it. Social media was on it in seconds, turning Wilson's frozen, restrained face into a meme. Steam coming out of her ears. One comment said, "Another dubbed it WNBA Civil War, courtside edition." This wasn't just a courtside blooper. It was a symbol of something deeper. Wilson's long-standing frustration with how Caitlin Clark's popularity has completely eclipsed hers in the public eye. A'ja Wilson is a 2-time MVP. She's a WNBA champion. She's statistically dominant. But when the conversation shifts to women's basketball, Clark's name rockets to the front. And that's clearly been eating at Wilson for a while. She said out loud before, in interviews, on podcasts, Wilson has been vocal about not getting the respect or recognition she believes she's earned. She's talked about how the media favors certain players. She's hinted at deeper issues, including how race might play a role in who gets the spotlight. But in that moment at the Heat game, her silence was louder than any interview she's done. The internet didn't need subtitles. They knew exactly what that glare meant. And that's the kicker. This wasn't even a WNBA game. It wasn't Clark out there scoring logo threes. It wasn't Wilson missing a game winner. It was the presence of a Clark jersey, showing up like an unwanted guest at a family reunion. The fact that someone proudly wore Clark's jersey to an NBA game, where Wilson was sitting courtside, just added insult to injury. Wilson didn't say a word publicly after the video made the rounds. She didn't need to. Everyone else did the talking. The clip sparked debates, jokes, think pieces. All of it centered around the idea that A'ja Wilson can't escape Caitlin Clark's shadow, no matter where she goes. And to be fair, it's not Clark's fault. Clark didn't tell a fan to sit near Wilson in her jersey. But the way Wilson reacted made it clear she's still taking this way too personally. And that's where the problem lies. This wasn't just an awkward coincidence. It exposed a deeper truth about Wilson's inability or refusal to treat Clark's success as anything other than a personal affront. That moment could have been brushed off, maybe even laughed off. Instead, Wilson turned into a meme. She handed the internet another reason to clown her, not for her game, but for her ego. Let's be honest, this isn't new. A'ja Wilson has been carrying this chip on her shoulder for a long time now. Every time Clark gets another endorsement, every time another sports show opens with a Clark highlight, Wilson sees it as a knock on her own value. But here's the thing, this isn't a zero-sum game. Clark winning in the court of public opinion doesn't mean Wilson's legacy is worthless. Yet Wilson keeps acting like it does. Caitlin Clark isn't just a basketball player anymore. She's a cultural figure. Her rise has been meteoric. And yes, it's turned into a media obsession. But this isn't the first time the public has latched onto a new face. What makes Clark different is the way her presence seems to trigger such visceral reactions from other players, especially Wilson. The uncomfortable part? Clark didn't really do anything to provoke this moment. She wasn't even there. Her jersey was. That's all it took to spark an entire internet narrative, and Wilson walked right into it. All Clark had to do was continue existing in the national spotlight, while Wilson added fuel to the fire by reacting like her personal space had been invaded. Clark, for her part, has stayed quiet in these moments. She's not out here throwing shade or playing into the drama. She knows her popularity isn't just about basketball. It's about timing, storylines, the media machine. It's not her fault she gets the ESPN treatment every time she breathes. And she's certainly not to blame for fans proudly wear her jersey wherever they go. Wilson could learn something from that restraint. Instead of playing the victim or rolling her eyes at every public Clark mention, she could lean into the spotlight she deserves. Let her game speak louder than her frustration. But right now, Wilson's letting her emotions lead, and it's not a good look. This isn't just about one viral clip. It's about a pattern. Wilson's complaints about media coverage and bias aren't entirely baseless, but when they come off as bitterness, they lose their impact. You can be right and still come off wrong. You can have a point, but if the delivery feels petty, it's going to backfire. That's what keeps happening. Wilson's public frustration is turning her into a punchline, not a trailblazer. The memes aren't about her dominance on the court. They're about her scowling at a jersey. Her legacy shouldn't be shaped by side eyes and thinly veiled resentment, but she's letting it happen. And the more she leans into this narrative of being overlooked, the more it overshadows the things that actually matter. Wilson's interviews have shifted from game talk to gripe sessions, from celebrating her wins to venting about someone else's. That's not how you control your own story. It's how you lose it. When Clark speaks, it's usually about the game, the fans, or where women's basketball is headed. Wilson? Lately, it's about not being appreciated. That contrast is everything. It shapes how the public sees both of them. Clark comes off focused. Wilson comes off fed up. At some point, Wilson has to ask herself what she wants her reputation to be. Right now, it's a mix of excellence and exasperation, and no one's denying her skill. But every time she lets herself get rattled by a Clark mention, or in this case, a Clark jersey, she chips away at the respect she's fighting for. Clark's rise doesn't cancel out Wilson's legacy, but Wilson's reactions are doing more damage than any headline ever could. Instead of capitalizing on this moment in women's basketball, she's making it about her feelings. She's handing the public more reasons to view her as insecure, not as a powerhouse. In the end, the Miami Heat game moment wasn't about basketball. It was about image. And Wilson's image took a hit, not because of what someone else did, but because of how she chose to respond. A silent glare might feel justified in the moment, but in the age of constant cameras, every reaction becomes permanent. There was a time when Wilson's presence alone commanded respect. Now, it's overshadowed by her frustration with someone else's spotlight. And that's the real loss, not just for her, but for what she represents. Because like it or not, the world is watching. And it's going to remember the eye rolls, not the... That jersey didn't say a word, but it said everything. A Caitlin Clark Indiana Fever jersey, sitting quietly 2 seats from Aya Wilson, upstaging one of the most decorated players in the WNBA without even trying. That's the twisted irony of this whole moment. It wasn't about confrontation. It was about presence. And the presence of that name on that jersey in that seat was louder than a stadium full of boos. The fan wearing it wasn't doing anything provocative. No shouting. No grand gestures. Just existing. And yet that existence became an event. IS glare turned into a viral moment, and Clark's jersey, it became a character in the story. Proof of how far-reaching Clark's influence has become. Even when she's not in the building, she's there. And Aya, she made it obvious she's not okay with that. The thing is, Wilson had options. She could have laughed it off. Could have turned the moment into a light-hearted clapback on social media. Could have even spun it into a pro-WNBA statement about the league growing, but she didn't. Instead, she gave that jersey more power by reacting with visible irritation. And this is where Wilson continues to miss the bigger picture. Her achievements are being swallowed by her attitude. Her legacy, slowly buried under waves of perceived slights. A fan wearing a rival's jersey shouldn't send professionals spiraling. But here we are, again, talking more about her face at a game than her game itself. Caitlin Clark isn't campaigning for this kind of attention. She doesn't need to. The public is doing that for her. And the fact that her name generates this level of reaction, even when she's off court, is exactly why she's dominating the conversation. She's the kind of cultural lightning rod that sports thrives on. Meanwhile, Wilson's approach is turning reactive, not proactive. Instead of elevating herself, she keeps trying to bring others down by implication. When Clark's fans show up, Wilson acts like it's an insult. When Clark's name trends, Wilson takes it personally. This isn't how you play the long game. This is how you get left behind in a league you helped build. Let's call it what it is, bitterness, not about the sport, but about the spotlight. Wilson isn't losing games because of Clark. She's not losing awards. What she's losing is a popularity contest, and her reaction to that loss is to throw shade in increasingly public and petty ways. And the sad part? She doesn't need to. Aya Wilson could be using this moment to dominate the media cycle in her own right. Instead, her name is only trending when it's tied to some passive-aggressive drama. That's not dominance. That's distraction. And for someone with her resume, that's a tragic waste of leverage. Zoom in on Clark's expression in her recent interviews, appearances, or even just when she's in the stands. There's a calm detachment. She's aware of the noise but never adds to it. That restraint, whether calculated or natural, is what keeps her image so clean, so untouchable. It's not just about skill, it's about control. Aya, on the other hand, keeps slipping. Her reactions are real, sure, but they're also easy to mock. She's making herself memeable for the wrong reasons. And in today's world, that matters. The internet doesn't care about quiet dignity. It cares about what it can clip, caption, and retweet. Wilson keeps handing. The interviews tell the full story. Wilson keeps talking about not being seen, not being appreciated, not being centered. And those are valid feelings. But repeating them over and over again, while throwing silent side eyes every time Clark's name comes up, starts to sound like insecurity, not injustice. In contrast, Clark rarely addresses a drama. She doesn't clap back. She doesn't fan the flames. That silence is powerful. It creates distance. It allows people to project strength onto her even when she's not saying a word. Wilson's problem? She's saying too much without realizing how little it helps her. Public perception isn't always fair, but it's real, and Wilson isn't doing herself any favors. She wants to be respected for her talent, which she absolutely deserves, but keeps letting her pride hijack the conversation. That moment at the Heat game could have been a footnote. She turned it into a headline. The worst part? No one forced her into the storyline. She volunteered. By reacting, by glaring, by letting herself get caught slipping in real time, she became the story. Not because of her talent, but because of her attitude. And right now, her attitude is costing her more than a few jokes online. It's costing her control of her own narrative. Clark isn't just popular. She's ubiquitous. Her jersey is everywhere. Her name is on every promo. Her highlights open shows. And yes, that can be frustrating for someone like Wilson, who's put in years of work only to watch the spotlight shift to a newcomer. But this is the game now. Popularity isn't earned through stats alone. It's a messy mix of timing, charisma, storytelling, and public thirst for the next big thing. Clark hit that sweet spot. Wilson didn't. And no amount of eye rolls will change that. What Wilson can do is shift the focus back to her game. But that requires restraint, something she hasn't shown. When your response to someone else's success is constant frustration, people stop rooting for you. They stop seeing you as the underdog and start seeing you as the problem. That's the risk Wilson is running. And honestly, she's already halfway there. This moment should have been a blip. Instead, it's become another entry in the growing list of Aya versus the hype. And if she keeps this up, she's going to end up remembered more for what she didn't do, control her emotions, manage her image, rise above, than for what she accomplished on the... That jersey is more than merch. It's a symbol of how far Clark's influence stretches. It's part of the new reality of women's basketball. One where media attention doesn't always follow the most accomplished. It follows the most marketable. Wilson can fight that, or she can adjust. Right now, she's fighting, and losing, because the internet isn't on her side. Not when she keeps making it this easy. All it takes is a fan in the wrong jersey at the wrong time, and Wilson goes viral for all the wrong reasons. That's not unfair. That's avoidable. At this point, the frustration isn't subtle. It's not hidden between the lines or buried in careful wording. It's right there on Aya Wilson's face, and the Miami Heat game only confirmed what a lot of people already suspected. She's tired of Caitlin Clark being everywhere, tired of the attention, tired of feeling like her resume should speak louder than Clark's popularity. And instead of handling that tension like a veteran leader, she keeps letting it leak out in moments she can't control. That's what made the courtside incident so damaging. It wasn't dramatic because of what happened. It was dramatic because of how unnecessary it was. A fan in a Clark jersey is not an insult. It's not a protest. It's not an attack on Wilson's career. Treating it like one only makes Wilson look thin-skinned, and that's a label no superstar wants attached to their name. Caitlin Clark's rise hasn't been quiet or modest. It's been loud, constant, and unavoidable. Her face is everywhere. Her name travels fast, and her jersey has become a walking billboard for the new era of women's basketball. None of that required Wilson's approval, and none of it was designed to disrespect her. But Wilson's reaction makes it seem like she believes it was. That's the disconnect. Clark's popularity isn't a referendum on Wilson's greatness. The two things can coexist. But Wilson keeps treating Clark's visibility like a personal slight, as if every camera pointed at Clark is one taken away from her. That mindset is what's hurting her, not the media, not the fans, and certainly not Clark herself. What makes this harder to defend is Wilson's experience. She's not a rookie navigating her first taste of fame. She's a seasoned star who understands how media cycles work. She knows cameras are always searching for reactions. And yet, she keeps giving them exactly what they want: visible annoyance, passive-aggressive body language, and moments that get clipped and replayed. If Wilson wants to be seen as the standard bearer of the league, this isn't how you do it. Leaders absorb moments like this without flinching. They don't let a jersey 2 seats away rattle them. They don't turn personal insecurities into public theater. Wilson had the chance to look unbothered. She chose the opposite. Clark's silence throughout all of this is doing more for her image than any press statement ever could. She doesn't respond to the noise. She doesn't engage with the comparisons. She lets the attention roll without acknowledging the tension it creates for others. That restraint makes her seem composed, even when she's the center of the storm. And that contrast is brutal for Wilson, because every time Wilson reacts emotionally, Clark looks calmer by default. Every glare, every frustrated comment, every moment of visible irritation widens a gap in public perception. One looks focused on the future. The other looks stuck on the comparison. Wilson's defenders argue that she's just being honest, that she's expressing feelings many players share. And that might be true. But honesty without discipline turns into self-sabotage. The public doesn't reward raw frustration. It rewards confidence. And Wilson keeps choosing the former. There's also a point where explaining your lack of recognition starts to sound like complaining about it. Wilson crossed that line a while ago. Now, moments like the Heat game just reinforce the narrative that she's obsessed with what Clark represents rather than secure in what she's accomplished. Listen closely to how Clark handles questions about fame and attention. She redirects. She downplays. She brings it back to the game. Whether that intentional or instinctive, it works. It keeps her from looking defensive or threatened. It keeps her above the drama. Wilson, meanwhile, keeps stepping into it. Her interviews have shifted tone, from confident to combative, from celebratory to resentful. That shift didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen by accident. It's a result of letting comparisons take root instead of shutting them down. The Heat game moment didn't create this narrative. It confirmed it. It showed in real time how deeply Clark's popularity has gotten under Wilson's skin. And once the internet saw that, there was no pulling it back. Screenshots don't disappear. Clips don't forget context. They erase it. Now, instead of talking about Wilson's dominance or leadership, people are talking about her reaction, about her expression, about how easily she seemed rattled. That's the cost of taking things personally in a profession that demands composure. At NBA games, through fans and jerseys, is just reality now. It's evidence of her reach, not a conspiracy against Wilson. And the sooner Wilson accepts that, the better off she'll be. Fighting the tide only makes you look small against it. The league is growing. New stars are emerging. Attention is shifting. That's not an insult to the players who came before. It's proof that the sport is expanding. Wilson should be celebrating that. Instead, she's glaring at it from 2 seats away. What's frustrating is that Wilson has everything she needs to rise above this. The talent, the accolades, the platform. What she lacks in moments like these is perspective. And without it, she keeps shrinking herself in the public eye. No one expects her to like being overshadowed. But professionalism means not letting that discomfort define you. Right now, Wilson is letting it do exactly that. And until she stops reacting and starts recalibrating, these moments will keep. That jersey didn't embarrass Aya Wilson. Her reaction did. It turned a harmless fan choice into a viral symbol of insecurity. And unless Wilson learns to accept the reality of Caitlin Clark's mainstream appeal, this won't be the last time she finds herself on the wrong side of the narrative. If you think Wilson needs to reset how she handles this spotlight shift, or if you think the criticism has gone too far, drop your thoughts below. Make sure to like the video if this breakdown helped put the situation into perspective. Share it with someone who's been following the WNBA drama closely. And subscribe for more deep dives into the moments everyone's talking about but few are actually breaking down.